I'm going to beat this fucking story to a dead horse because the alarm bells are ringing. And, hardly anybody's talking about it, only because there's so much fucking going on in the world that, this is taking a backseat because it's not happening yet. Um, I mean, with the rising rates in terms of rent, food, the destruction of our Social Security and health care, and now with SNAP benefits ending, the psychological anomalies that are present in the general populace, and with the growing polarizing political divide right in your fucking face, along with the insane amounts of racism I've been seeing online, this story would indeed be an afterthought. But that's exactly why this threat is much more pertinent now than ever before because hardly anyone's talking about it. There's an article from Modern Diplomacy. It was written by Dr. Hamza Khan, who got his PhD in international relations at the United Kingdom. And this was, posted September 30th, 2025, Modern Diplomacy. I'll link the article, but I just want to read this a little bit to you. It feels strange to even write this, but Al-Qaeda is back in Afghanistan. Who knew? Not in whispers or shadows, but in a way that looks a lot like their pre-9/11 presence. As I've said in videos before, more than 2 decades after the war on terror began, the group has carved out space under the Taliban's protection with the full approval of Senator Eugene Haqqani, the son of the founder of the Haqqani network, Jalaluddin Haqqani, who was the first the first Afghan warlord to accept Arabs to his ranks, which, by example, Gulbuddin Hekmatyar and Abdul Rasul Sayyaf did the same. Reports say that Hamza bin Laden, Osama's son, is now one of the leaders alongside Saif al-Adil, which I'm reading his book, 33 Strategies of War, about how to train operatives in the battlefield. And together they managed to rebuild training camps across a dozen provinces. Saif al-Adil's manual, 33 Strategies of War, is used for the training of these operatives in these training camps currently. You can get a copy in Amazon, English translated. But I'm actually going to do a chapter reading of the book because you have to understand the way these people are thinking. That's just not survival. That's expansion. When the United States pulled out in 2021, the big promise for the Taliban was simple. Afghan soil wouldn't be used to threaten the world again. These are the Doha agreements. And they broke it right away. That line brought them a degree of legitimacy, at least for a while. But looking at the evidence now, it's hard to believe that they stuck to it because the Taliban factions aren't just turning a blind eye. They're hosting training camps, letting militants operate on old U.S. and British bases, who, by the way, when the Biden administration gave the executive order to abscond Afghanistan, the military, after a 20-year war, we left behind billions in weapons. Maybe on purpose? Is that so much? Is that really out there? And even facilitating drone assembly. Great. Think about the symbolism of that for a moment. Facilities once meant to dismantle Al-Qaeda are now being used to rebuild it. The numbers are sobering. About 500 seasoned Al-Qaeda commanders have slipped into Taliban and TTP ranks. The TTP is Tehrik-e-Taliban in Pakistan, a Taliban offshoot. These are over 7,000 TTP fighters, 1,500 Baloch separatists, Balochistan. That's where Ramzi Youssef, the 1923 World Trade Center bomber, and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the alleged mastermind 9/11 attacks, are from, where they grew up in anyway. And thousands more linked to Al-Qaeda, the ISKP, the ETIM, and Jaish al-Adl, spread out across Afghanistan. Provinces like Kunduz, Kandahar, Helmand, and Nangarhar aren't just names on a map, they're active hubs for training and coordination. In fact, Kandahar and Nangarhar were Al-Qaeda training camp towns. In fact, a lot of the major fighting against the Soviets back in 1979 were done in those cities. Helmand, of course, home to the second largest poppy field acreage on the earth. This isn't just about ragtag fighters and pickup trucks. We're talking about organized camps, propaganda channels, and increasingly drones that carry out precise attacks. One detail that struck me: how militant families are being supported financially. In Farah province, Afghanistan's 9th Border Brigade repeatedly paid out 750,000 Afghanis to the families of 12 fighters killed inside Pakistan. The Pakistan Taliban and the Afghan Taliban, although not the same, but they're of the same family, different branches, are fighting against the Pakistan government for control of the country. It's not a huge amount in global terms, but it matters. It tells fighters their families won't be abandoned. That's the kind of backing that sustains these networks. The financial and political web goes even further. Allegations that India's RAW funneled around 300,000 to the Tehrik-i Taliban earlier this year underline how Afghan soil is being used as a chessboard, because the battle for Kashmir continues between India and Pakistan. And sometimes the Indian Western separatists will, and the government, including the intelligence services, will actually fund the Taliban in Pakistan to fight against the government because they're trying to create a caliphate in Pakistan. Even though we have a number of people in the ISI sympathetic to the Taliban, just like you have a number of princes in Saudi Arabia sympathetic to Al-Qaeda. Regional powers are meddling, and Pakistan is caught in the middle. The Taliban either can't or won't stop it. The resurgence of Al-Qaeda is more about local insurgency. The group thrives on alliances. Their renewed ties with the ISKP and TTP point to a coalition of militants who share resources, training, and ideology. It's a dangerous mix. In the 2000s, Al-Qaeda relied heavily on safe havens in remote areas. Now they have those again, but with modern technology layered on top. This is the reason why I say Al-Qaeda is more dangerous now than they've ever been under bin Laden. A drone carrying explosives doesn't need a passport. That's the new reality. That's the new warfare. The obvious question is, what could be done? And it's complicated. The U.S. is tired of Afghanistan, which is true. Washington doesn't have much appetite for non-engagement beyond counterterrorism strikes. Pakistan is dealing with its own internal chaos and economic troubles from groups like Jaish-e-Mohammed and TTP. If both countries know ignoring this won't make it disappear. We've seen what happens when safe havens are allowed to harden. The threat doesn't just stay put. It moves, it mutates, it finds the weakest link in the chain and exploits it. What worries me is the fatigue. People are exhausted by the very mention of Afghanistan. 20-year war. What did we accomplish? The Taliban took over the country, and that's who we were fighting against. The Taliban and Al-Qaeda took over the country in weeks. 20 years of headlines. Let the world desensitize. The militants notice. They flourish when the world stops paying attention. Right now, that's exactly what's happening. Al-Qaeda and the Taliban are flourishing under the ignorance of the world because the intelligence services are basically decentralized. Hardly anyone's in Afghanistan, let alone we have operatives there. I don't know if we do. This is a case of pre-9/11 once again, where we have the CIA and the NSA collecting information on these operatives and not sharing it with the FBI. Could that be true? Don't throw that out the window. That's exactly what happened pre-9/11. I'm not arguing for another occupation or endless military campaign, but some level of coordination is critical. Pressure on the Taliban must be real, not symbolic. Sanctions aren't working. Intelligence sharing between Washington, Islamabad, and regional players can't be left to chance. If the Taliban leadership keeps hedging, protecting militants on one side while asking for aid on the other, then international recognition and financial support should come from with real strings attached. I just think that the State Department is that ignorant when it comes to international terrorism and how to spot it. Do you really think Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, knows anything about Al-Qaeda and the Taliban? Do you really think Donald Trump, the President of the United States, really knows about it? J.D. Vance? These conservatives are more worried about you not getting snapped than international terrorism. That's a fucking fact. I mean, take a look at what just happened this weekend when the FBI Director, Kash Patel, another fucking idiot, basically said, oh, we had a big bust here in Michigan in Dearborn. ISIS-K related. Found out that the storyline is false. The FBI tried to manufacture a terrorist group. Meanwhile, ignoring the actual intelligence coming from people like Bill Rojo and Sarah Adams. I'm not an expert, so I can't include myself in this field. I'm just reporting on the stuff I'm reading because who the fuck is doing it? I see the threat from a mile away. You know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. I mean, at this age of my life, I'll be 56 and next month. It's only by the grace of God I can wipe myself anymore. But even I can see the threat is real. Who are the United States supporting in Syria? The leader of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, a terrorist. Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, Ahmed al-Shara. Who's he killing? Alawites, Christians in Syria. They're a terrorist group aligned with a number of terrorist groups affiliated and sympathetic to Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. We shouldn't underestimate how dangerous this moment is. Al-Qaeda isn't trying to recreate the past exactly, but they're drawing on it. Safe havens, ideological alliances, and now access to modern tech. Those are the ingredients for something that could spell out beyond South Asia. The Gulf and even parts of Europe could feel the shockwaves if this network keeps growing unchecked. And you already have a hotbed of right-wing extremism reacting to the extremists of the left. A political class war is this close. I mean, you take a look at what's happening in Great Britain. They're on the verge. You know, Elon Musk even tweeted this, that the country is just seconds away from a civil war because they hate immigrants, because their country's government is bombing Islamic countries, which are creating immigrants to navigate to or gravitate toward the only countries that are left that can offer economic benefits, which are the countries that are bombing the Islamic countries to begin with. You don't want immigrants in your country? Stop bombing these countries. That's how you end it. Yeah. It's easy to tune out news like this and assume it's just more of the same. And when this, these left-leaning politicians get into power in, say, Great Britain and the United States, what happens? Oh, we got to make up for the conservatives' war against the Middle East. We'll just accept the refugees, not realizing that these leftists also bomb Islamic countries at the same time. But you won't hear that because they're good-looking. They smell nice. They're not, speaking retarded like the conservatives are, right? It's amazing the hypocrisy the United States public is when it comes to politics, and let alone geopolitics. It's easy to tune out news like this and assume it's just more of the same, but Al-Qaeda's resurgence in Afghanistan isn't just history repeating itself. It's history remixing with new tools and fresh energy. That should worry everyone, not just the neighbors across the Durand line. It's a great article. I'll link it in the description. Now, again, let's go back to the National Counterterrorism Center, right? This is an article that was written in October 2nd, 2025. NCTC Director Joe Kent. United States must stay vigilant against Al-Qaeda threats. I went to a Ranger game about a week and a half ago, and I went to Grand Central, which has always been a sensitive target for Islamic militancy to attack, even before 9/11. And I had a copy of the NCTC on my phone, and I showed it to a cop. We have military and cops once in a while, they patrol the area. But, on this day, and it was a weekend, it was a fucking Saturday, I went up to the cop and showed him the report. He said he never heard of it. Now, the NCTC report on Al-Qaeda, which is the Spotlight report, is supposed to be disseminated to all local, federal, and state departments, law enforcement departments. This cop never heard of it. New York being the epicenter, right? The U.S. National Counterterrorism Center is putting the country on notice regarding potential attacks and infiltrated by the pan-Islamist terrorist organization Al-Qaeda. Look, it's not. This is not a conservative conspiracy. This is not some, he's a paranoid, as Adam Fitzgerald. He's paranoid, right? No, I'm telling you what's happening in the shadows. That's what I focus on. I don't focus on what's going on in the light because you're seeing it for yourself. But what's in the shadows is being forgotten about. I knew it as soon as we left Afghanistan. And when the Taliban took over the country in less than 2 weeks, I knew we were in trouble. Because we didn't kill everybody in Al-Qaeda. Now, there are some under house arrest in Iran. And when I saw Fox News trying to blame Iran for being a state sponsor of terrorism and not just Saudi Arabia and the Gulf, I knew what they were setting up for a future war with Iran that links Al-Qaeda there, just like we tried to link Al-Qaeda to Iraq after 9/11. And we had to manufacture evidence for that. According to a memo released by the NCTC, Al-Qaeda is likely still seeking to leverage their media publications and global conflicts, particularly when there is a U.S. support of military involvement to inspire potential attackers. What it won't say is what we have done in Gaza, which is, by the way, a war crime many times over. And we invited even Kahanists to this country like Ben Gvir. Listen, what we did in Gaza alone with Israel is retribution for it's not even propaganda for any Salafist terrorist or Wahhabi terrorist or jihadist. That's all they need. I mean, what we did in Gaza itself is reprehensible, irredeemable in my eyes. I think everybody in the U.S. government that's involved with it should be tried for mass murder, war crimes, crimes against humanity, crimes of aggression. These are all the Hague International those three war crimes, crimes of aggression, and crimes against humanity are the three charges you could be charged with at the Hague. And this is the reason why Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant are still wanted by the International Criminal Courts. That's one. The relentless pursuit of our enemies means clearly defining and understanding them. NCTC Director Joe Kent stated, constant vigilance, including guarding our borders and ensuring our communities are informed. We have the knowledge and leadership to keep America safe. That said, it is critical for first responders and the public to stay alert and vigilant against threats from Al-Qaeda's global network. While a number of threats persist, the NCTC and our partners are monitoring 24/7 to thwart these attacks and keep America safe. Kent and the NCTC praised Donald Trump's policies amid the threats, claiming America is more prepared than ever to respond to and address any threat directly, rapidly, and with strategic coordination, which is bullshit. We're nowhere near ready. I'll link this article in the description too. We're not ready. Look at us. Do you really think mentally we're ready? We are fractured. We are ripe for an attack. We wouldn't even know what's going on. And I don't think it would take much to break us. I mean, we are that close to what Great Britain is looking at, a civil war between the donor class, the political class, and the racial class. I mean, we're begging to be separate from one another. And it's just going to take a terrorist attack to do it, because they'll just blame Biden and immigration, and that'll do it. And the conservatives, who have been holding back a lot of this, especially the crazy Trump voters, the evangelical Christians, the nut jobs that think that God is Chuck Norris with a rifle, have been really holding back against the leftists and being antagonistic toward them, specifically after Charlie Kirk. I mean, you saw how the conservatives acted with Charlie Kirk getting assassinated. Imagine a terrorist attack of this nature. He would break the country, literally. This is the reason why I do these videos, to keep you informed. I'm not an extremist. I'm not an emotional antagonist. And you should know that I don't promote, fanatic material, fanaticism. That's not what I do. I report as is. I'm very cut and dry. It's the reason why I'm not very popular. But I report as is, without bias and prejudice. And you could, take that for what you will. But my goal is to inform the audience about what's going on, because information is power, and power belongs in the hands of the people. So we have a threat coming. When is it going to happen? I don't know. My prediction was 12 to 14 months from now, but I really don't know. What do I know? So what do we do? Do we live in paranoia? Do we live in fear? No, live amongst your lives. But be more concentrated on what is happening outside of our borders rather than what's inside our borders. Because what's happening inside our borders is important, just as what's happening outside our borders is just as important. Don't look at each other like the enemy, because the enemy is the ones who are making us think we're the enemy to each other. And there's another enemy, south side of the borders, looking at us. waiting to attack. All right, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in the video. I'll see you.